Hey, it's Liz from No Trace. In this video, I'm going to show you how to repair a hammock with a weave like this. This project is inspired by another YouTuber named Nate Large, who did a similar weave with his grandfather's hammock from World War II. And this is a really nice way to make sure that your hammock is back in use. So let's go. In order to fix the hammock, I'm going to be using some rope. This is actually a nylon rope. Could not find a natural fiber rope in town, so I'm using what I could find to keep this hammock in use. It holds up to 160 pounds, but the hammock weight is going to be distributed between this rope and the ropes on the other side, so that is enough weight for this. I'm also going to be using a 2-inch metal ring. This holds up to like 1,600 pounds or something. So I found this at my local hardware store. It was probably only $5. And then we're gonna need something to hook this onto while we weave the new hangings for our hammock. So I have a clipboard here that I am going to create like a super simple setup so that my hook stays, or my ring rather, stays in place while I fix the hammock. I'm also going to use some weights to keep my hammock in place while we do the repair. I have a tutorial for how to make these simple pattern weights, so I'll link to that right here, but you could use anything you have laying around to place on your hammock while you work to kind of keep it from shifting around. The first step is to take off any of the old damaged rope. So the hammock is this fabric, and then the hammock hangs with this rope. And this rope is what's worn out the most. So I'm just gonna go over and cut the rope off of the hammock. And I'm gonna be careful not to cut the hammock because I don't wanna cut any of those strings, but we do wanna get rid of this rope that is totally worn out. So just go around and clip it. Okay, so all of the rope has been removed, and you could try to recycle this with some textile recycler near you, or use it for projects that don't have a heavy weight on them, because obviously this rope is no longer able to hold a heavy weight. Now before I start connecting to the new rope, I'm going to take a moment, because if you notice this hammock, the strands are twisted together. So I'm going to just take a moment and make sure that the twists are nice and tight for each of the loops on the hammock. So I'm just kind of opening it up and pulling up these loops, and as you can see, this one's kind of stopped being twisted. So I'm just going to take a moment and twist them together so that we get a nice tighter twist before we attach the rope. Okay, so all of the loops have been more or less twisted up again. They're not perfect, but that is okay. And I have it sort of spread out so I can work with this a little more easily. And I'm trying to figure out how far away from the loops my ring needs to be. And I am going to pull over the end of the hammock that's not broken and just get a ballpark idea of where to put the ring for my hammock. So let me move this so you can see it a little better. Okay, so I want my ring to be right about here, and I'm going to be connecting from the ring to these loops over here. And I want my ring to more or less stay in place. So the way I'm going to achieve that is I'm going to actually put it onto a clipboard. Okay, and I'm going to put my clipboard under my rotary mat, but you could also tape this down onto your work surface, or tie it, or use a hook, or some way to kind of keep it in place. But I'm just going to loop it on here so that my ring doesn't move around as much, and I've got this mat on top of the clipboard to kind of help out. You could add some weights. I think this is going to be enough. All right, so I've got my rope mostly unraveled, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be pulling about, I don't know, maybe 10 feet or so through all of the loops to make it all the way across. And the way I want to attach or restring my hammock is I'm going to be taking the end and start by going into the loop, so top down, and then come on over here, and I'm going to come from the bottom, if there is a bottom, or the right side of my hammock loop, and I'm going to pull a whole bunch of this rope through the loop and the ring. So I'm going to have a big tail up at the front and a big tail at the back to work with here. Okay, so once I've pulled several feet through, I'm trying to be mindful of keeping the loops about the same distance from my ring. I'm going to come back over and grab my end again, and again I'm going to come through the top of the ring and go out the bottom, and again come through the bottom of the loop and come out the top, and just continue to pull the rope through in that same pattern until I've connected the whole hammock, all of the hammock loops to the ring. As you're working, if you realize that you need more of the lead end of your rope, just pause and just pull some more rope through your loop so that you have more rope to work with. All right, once I've gotten through all of my loops, I'm going to take my end and just go through the ring one more time, again the same way, so coming over the top of the ring and out the bottom of the ring. Now we'll take a moment and make sure that your strands are not twisted around themselves. So if you start by laying the loops nice and flat the way that you came into the loops, so that you're capturing that, then take a moment up here and make sure that these strands are also nice and flat and not twisted with one another. What I'm going to do next is get some masking tape, and I'm going to be taping down one side of the rope for each of my hammock loops. And I want to tape down the side that the rope entered from. So remember, I was kind of coming up through the bottom or the right side of each loop, and I'm just going to tape down that side on each of my loops. Okay, so I've taped down one side of each of the ropes coming out of the loops, and there shouldn't be any twists or overlaps up here in the ring. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take a chopstick, but you could also do this with dowel, and I'm just going to weave the chopstick under that taped down piece of rope, over the not taped down side, and then under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. And I got this from a tutorial by Nate Large on YouTube. I'm going to be doing kind of a modified weave of what he did. Okay, so I've made it all the way through, and now I'm pulling up the chopstick to create a little tight weave here at the ring, and I can kind of take a moment and tighten and adjust things so that it looks nice here at the ring. I'm not sure how well you can see that. I'm going to tighten up my zoom. All right, so we have a little bit of a closer view here, and just make sure that this weave is looking nice and tight, and we leave the chopstick in place, or the dowel, and we're going to grab one end of our rope and slide it under that chopstick and out the other side. Then we grab our other end of rope, which is quite long, and pull it through. Here's the end. Here's the end. Okay, so here's the first rope I pulled through. We pulled the second rope through under the chopstick as well. Okay, so both ends are now through, and you can take a moment and sort of straighten this out so that the weave here is tight and laying flat and looking pretty good. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and move the chopstick through the opposite direction. So instead of going under this taped side, we're gonna go over the taped side, under the other loop, and then over again, under, over, under. So just the opposite of what we did previously. Over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. And then again, we pull the chopstick up to the ring and we tighten things down. And then we're gonna do the opposite. We're gonna grab this short end and send it under the chopstick back in the other direction. And then again, I'm gonna grab my long end and send it in the opposite direction. You could cut your long end at this point. I don't mind pulling it through, so I'm just gonna wait and cut it when I know exactly how much I need. But if it drives you crazy to do this, just cut your long end. And almost there. Okay. All right, then you can take your chopstick out and then you can pause and tighten up the weave and make sure that it's laying flat and looks good. Okay, before we do our next set of weaving, we're gonna actually pull, we're gonna no longer weave over the outermost two. So we're gonna actually pull our ends through so that they're not gonna be going over those last two ends. So just go ahead and pull it out. And then pull out the shorter side, which is a lot faster. Okay, and then just make sure your knot is still looking good. And now we're gonna take our chopstick and we're not gonna weave through the outermost loops. We're gonna weave through the other ones and we're gonna go back to that first pattern that we did, which was under the taped piece, over the non-taped, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, and over. And again, we're not catching these and the weave. And then just pull that chopstick up, make sure everything is tight. And then we are gonna send our tails under the chopstick. So again, with the short one, and then with the long one. That takes forever. Now that these two strands have gone through, I'm going to do the opposite pattern. Again, I don't need to catch these loops in this weave, so I'm just going to go over the taped, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. And again, I'm leaving off those end pieces and I'm just tightening up the rope here. And I'm going to start with my short tail, send it through alongside the chopstick there. And then I will get my long tail and send it through as well. All right, so both ends are through, and now we are ready to lose the next two loops from our weave. So the way we do that is the same. We're just gonna pull our ends so that they are not gonna go over those anymore. So we're just gonna set the ends aside for now, and we are gonna do the same technique with the chopstick or the dowel. We're gonna ignore these outer two loops. You can even pull that tape out of the way. And we're just going to work with these. And we are going to start by going under the taped side, over the non-taped side, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. And again, we'll tighten up our weave here. And we'll send the short end through under the chopstick or dowel or long pencil, whatever you have. And then we will grab our long end and pull it through too. All right, both ends are through, so go ahead and tighten that up. And then we're gonna do the same process of weaving again in the opposite direction. And oh, I lost my little piece of tape here. Oh, I don't need that one, right. Okay, so we're doing the opposite direction. So we're gonna go over the taped side this time and under the non-taped side. So over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, and just tighten that up. And send our short end through first. And then you can send the long end through, which takes a little bit longer. Once they're both through, again, we just tighten up our weave. You can get that chopstick out of the way and make sure it looks nice and tight. All right, so now we're going to repeat this process. We are going to stop weaving through these outermost loops. So I'm just going to untape them and move them to the side. I'm going to pull, let's see, let's go ahead and untape this one, move it to the side. And I'm going to pull my short tail through so it's no longer going to catch those guys. And I'm going to pull my long tail through so it also won't capture that last loop. Okay, so I'm just working with these last 3 loops now. This hammock has 9 loops altogether. So again, I'm going to take my chopstick, and again, I'm going to start with the taped down side. My tape is moving around on me a little bit, but I'm going to go under, over, under, over, under, and over, and tighten that up. And send my short tail through. And then I'm going to send my long tail through. One more time. Okay, so now that I have gotten these 2 through, again, what I'm going to do is sort of reach in between these layers, and I am going to tie these 2 together in a square knot. So I'm just doing 1 knot and then the second knot on top so that I have a nice little square knot. Oop, let's get this tidied up here. There. Okay, we're almost done with the hammock repair. So we made a nice knot, and now we are going to close this up. Okay, so I trimmed the rope off of the square knot here that I made, and now I'm just melting the ends using a lighter. It's a little bit smelly, so you might want to do this outside. If you use a natural fiber rope, you'd want to stitch that knot up really well so that it can't come apart. So just take a moment and melt your ends, and that kind of melts it to the knot so that your whole knot is kind of fused to itself. And I'm not there yet, so I'm going to keep melting until my knot is more or less fused to itself. All right, so I got my knot melted down, and my hammock is ready for action. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope it helps you get your hammock back in use again. And if you liked this video and you made it this far, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the No Trace channel to get notified about all of our videos. We put out a new video every single week on zero waste sewing, crafting, and lifestyle tips.